Good afternoon. Today is July 20th, 2026. I am Thomas Toft, a qualified tax expert with Legal Aid of Western Michigan, and today we're going to be talking about how to stop scammers from filing tax returns with your info, IRS IP PIN security. Now, before we get started, I want to just mention that this is not legal advice. Nothing in this presentation is a substitute for a private consultation with an attorney regarding a legal problem. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get to it. First, we should talk about how scammers like to e-file fake returns. Electronic filing, which we call e-file, is the submission of a tax return to the IRS over the internet. Identity thieves may file a tax return pretending to be you or improperly claim you or your child as a dependent. Criminals often prefer e-filing because it is faster and more efficient than mailing paper returns. Scammers know the IRS usually processes e-filed tax returns quicker than mailed returns. And scammers can use artificial intelligence and automated computer programs to do mass e-filings with people's stolen information. So what is an IP PIN? An IP PIN is a 6-digit number issued to the IRS to help prevent someone else from filing a return using a Social Security number. The IRS IP PIN program assigns you a unique 6-digit PIN that must be entered on your federal tax return. It helps prevent criminals from e-filing a tax return in your name without your IP PIN. It issues a new IP PIN each year for added security, and it causes the IRS to reject an e-filed tax return using your Social Security number if the correct IP PIN is not entered. Now, IP PINs are bad for scammers. Scammers generally cannot e-file a federal tax return using your Social Security number without your IP PIN. Without your IP PIN, a scammer attempting to file a fraudulent return may have to submit a paper return instead, and they don't want to do that. A paper return filed without the required IP PIN is subject to additional IRS identity verification procedures. And an IP PIN removes a major tool used by tax scammers by making fraudulent e-filing more difficult. If you have an IP PIN, it's a lot harder for a scammer to file a fake return using your information because they want to use e-filing. Most of the time they want to use e-filing. If you have an IP PIN, it throws a wrench into their process because now they generally can't do that. Let's talk about how to get an IP PIN. IRS IP PIN online tool. Well, they've got this website here. You can log in and you can request an IP PIN using that online tool. Now, if you don't have a current irs.gov account, you must create one and verify your identity. If you do get an IP PIN through the IRS online tool, it's available immediately in your IRS online account. However, it's important to know that if you get an IP PIN through the IRS online tool, the IRS will not automatically mail it to you every year. It expects you to log into your account and retrieve it. However, if needed, you can usually call the IRS and ask to mail it, but that's really not available if you opted into the IP PIN program for the first time during the current year, or if you're requesting them to mail you an IP PIN during the annual maintenance period, which is generally November through mid-January. You can also complete an IRS Form 15227 and submit it to the IRS. Now there's a blank PDF form available at this website where you can download the Form 15227, and I'm also giving you the website where you can access the form and complete it and submit it electronically. That's where you can log in, type in your information, click a button, and it will actually transfer it straight to the IRS electronically without you having to go get a stamp, put it in the mail. Now to use this form, there are some requirements. One is that your adjusted gross income on the last filed return must be under $84,000 for individuals or under $168,000 for married filing jointly. But you must have access to a telephone because the IRS is going to call to make sure it's you that applied. You must have access to the telephone because if you don't and they can't contact you, then they won't process it. So I assume most people do have phones, but just beware that they would be contacting you. Be on the lookout for that. I know we get a lot of scammer calls coming in, but the IRS will give a call to you, make sure it was you that did it, because they don't want to give an IP pin out if you're not the one that applied. Now, after the IRS verifies your identity, it'll mail your IP pin within 4 to 6 weeks. And taxpayers who obtain an IP pin through the Form 15227 generally receive a new IP pin by mail each year. Now, what if you're not able to get it using the form? Say you're not eligible, you tried online, doesn't work. Well, if you can't get an IP pin online or through the Form 15227, you can visit the IRS Taxpayer Assistance Center. Now, an appointment is required for an IP pin assistance at one of these centers. You can call 844-545-5640 to schedule an appointment with a Taxpayer Assistance Center. The only West Michigan Taxpayer Assistance Center is in Grand Rapids. So be aware of that. If you're living in a city that is a bit farther away, you would have to travel to Grand Rapids to make your appointment. Now when you go, you're going to want to bring 2 forms of identification, including 1 government-issued picture identification. When you get an IP pin this way, the IRS will usually mail it within 3 weeks, and they will mail you a new IP pin every year. What about dependents? How to get an IP pin for a dependent? Well, if your dependent is 18 or older, and they have an IRS account, they can actually log in and request an IP pin themselves. If they don't have a current online IRS account, they can set one up. They can just apply online. They'll get it instantaneously. But if your dependent is under 18 or cannot set up an IRS online account, a parent, legal guardian, or other authorized representative can submit a Form 15227 if eligible, or schedule an appointment at a local taxpayer assistance center. And when you call, just ask them what documentation to bring when scheduling the appointment. Now, once you get an IP pin, it's valid for 1 calendar year, and the IRS generates a new IP pin each year. That's an extra way they protect you, because with the number changing every year, that way if a scammer would somehow get a hold of an IP pin, an older one of yours, they can't use it after a new one's been changed by the IRS. So if you had an IP pin, you go a couple years in the future and someone gets that old one, they try to use it, it's not going to work. It has to be the current IP pin to file returns, and the IRS sends you a new one every year. Now, use of your current year IP pin is needed with filing any federal individual income tax return during the year, but it includes prior year returns. So if you have an older tax return, like one from 1, 2, 3 years ago, you will need the current IP pin in order to file that. So that's important to keep in mind. Now, what do you do if you lose your IP pin? Well, you can log into your account and get it. You can call the IRS at 1-800-908-4499 to get an IP PIN reissued by mail. But the IP PIN can't be reissued by mail if you enrolled in the IP PIN program for the first time during the current year, or you requested it during the annual IP PIN maintenance period, which is generally November through mid-January. Now, if you don't have your IP PIN, then you're going to have to mail your tax return, which can significantly delay processing because it's going to go through extra scrutiny. Now, you can opt out of the IP PIN program. You can do it if you voluntarily enrolled in it and you weren't assigned an IP PIN because of a tax-related identity theft. The IRS will sometimes automatically enroll you into the program when there's been identity theft. If that happened, you're not able to opt out of it. Now, when you want to opt out, you can just sign into your IRS online account and go to the IP PIN section of your profile. If you're eligible, you'll see the option to opt out. If you can't access your online account, you can call the IRS at 800-908-4490 to discuss opting out with a representative. Now, here are some resources. These are different links. The link to get an identity protection PIN. There is the frequently asked questions the IRS has. I've included a link to the IRS website on when to file an identity theft affidavit if your identity has been stolen. And there's an IRS website about if you lost or didn't receive your IP PIN, how to get it. Are there any questions? Okay, great then. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, and until the next